the Digital Digest, your weekly breakfast of insights, tips and tricks and general information that will help anyone trying to move things forward in this digital world of accounting. This is our first live stream, so hopefully you are able to access and hear what we're talking about as we go through. We're going to be diving into the world of Microsoft Copilot, and we're going to be talking to our guests, who I'll introduce in a second, and understanding what their experience is and what their recommendations are of how you can get, I guess, maybe the most out of the system, or at least where to start. This show is sponsored by FreeAgent, probably the friendliest accounting software in the world, and one that is coming up to rival the others in this small business space. It's also brought to you both by the Digital Disruptors and SB Digital, which are pushing the boundaries in this digital accounting space. I'm your host, Ryan Piercy, and as I said, we are lucky to be joined by Simon Pinion from Scrutton Bland, who is now a key part of the SB Digital team, focusing on digital transformation for SMEs, and Russel Frayne, who is, I think, head of digital transformation at Gravita. Is that the official title, Russell?
Director of Transformation.
Director, there you go. And we're going to be diving into this space. So look, thanks very much for joining us. And what I want to do first is understand a bit about how you've started to roll out Microsoft Copilot across your firm. So I'm going to come out to you first, Simon. Can you talk a little bit about, I guess, your adoption of it and how you have started to trial it throughout Scrutton Bland?
So it's quite an informal rollout process. We worked with our tech provider T-Tech, and we rolled out licenses to partners. So there was about 4 partners in the trial. The reason for that was we figured to get adoption, we want it as a heads down, fed down into the team rather than fed up into the team. So we just basically gave licenses to 4 partners, including myself. We had a little bit of a mini training, nothing too detailed about what it can do, how to access it, etc. And then we said, go away and play with it. And so we all went off and played with it in different areas of what we do. We come back a couple of times to review on that and talk through our different experiences, and then went away again. That's kind of where we are in the process. It's probably dragged on a bit longer than I intended, but we kind of need to bring it back now to kind of a summary and talk about next steps. So that's where we are. Literally just gave key people in the firm who could influence everyone else to go away and play with it.
Brilliant. Well, I guess you've gone, as you say, the top-down approach, and you think that can have potentially the biggest impact because partners are probably the most pressed for time, and this is supposed to be efficiency saving through Microsoft Copilot. Is that what I guess the partners have experienced so far?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the idea of it is that it's always difficult to push stuff up. Actually, it's easy to push down, and so you need people at the top of the business to lead by example. So if the people at the top of the business can see the benefit of it, that's easy then to bring everyone else along the journey. And we've seen that, and the reports back is actually saving partners a lot of time.
Brilliant. And so the overall response has been positive then from the partners. Have there been any challenges through this?
Challenges of time. So not everyone in the group managed to find time to test it. And that's the challenge, and that's kind of why we kept it to a fairly informal approach. I guess you could argue if you made it more of a formal process, it would force people to have the time, but that's the route we adopted. We know it's still early days, so let's just see what we can play with it and do with it. I think it's just a case of, it's a bit like the laser invented in the 60s. No one really knew what it was for, but since then we found what it's really good for. It's that kind of process is how I see it with Copilot.
Yes, it's what works well, what doesn't work, and sometimes if you go and play with it, you work out what you can break, really, and the key things that you can fix as well. So it's a really interesting approach. And then Russell, from your side, how does your approach or your firm's approach contrast to what they've done at Scrutton Bland?
So we did a similar-ish type project to roll it out. We had a small group, focus group. What we did do though is we took people at different levels, because whilst partners have influence, they don't necessarily do the doing on a lot of these things. And whilst partners' time is super valuable, you get some really wider use case from speaking to other components of the business. So we had a number of people across different service lines. So we had internal functions, we had tax, audit, accounts, outsourcing, and also some transformation sort of people in there as well. So we had a bit more broader range of people. Same challenges though, exactly the same as Simon. People finding time in their day to actually focus on this. Part of the prerequisite was at least 30 minutes every day. And to be honest, probably didn't see that from everybody. So that was always a challenge. But yeah, I think it was very similar in terms of rollout, light informal training at the start, not to try and sort of box people into thinking about how they could use the product. And it was more a case of, you tell us what you want us to do, or what the benefits are, as opposed to us telling you where to look.
Okay, brilliant. And similar to Simon, has it been generally a positive response from everyone, or has there been some that have just not really found the benefits?
So there are some that struggle, and I would say where they struggle on use case. So these are the sort of team members that were not necessarily thinking outside the box in terms of what they're trying to solve. So they did struggle a little bit. But the overall sort of feedback was, currently, yes, it solves some problems. There will be efficiencies. But as Simon said, for most, it does some of this quite well, but if only it could do this next. And I think that will come in time. So it's definitely what everybody's appetite, but it's not necessarily blowing them away just yet.
Now, it's really interesting to, I guess, gather that insight, because something that comes out a lot from this AI and our discussions in the previous Digital Digest episodes we've done is it is early days, and you're not going to be able to solve all the problems. It's promising the world, but not quite delivering on it at the moment. But to really capitalize on, I guess once it gets there, you need to understand it and how to use it. And a key thing that's always flagged as a challenge when looking at Microsoft Copilot or other AI engine is the ability to prompt effectively. So it'd be really interesting to kind of get your opinions on, firstly, did you cover prompting in the training, the very brief training you had? And is it something that is easy to pick up, similar to, typing in Google? You either can learn how to do it and do it effectively, or you can never get it. Or is it something that is actually a big challenge? You need to do some formal training. So Russell, from your firm's impression, your impression, how do you feel prompting and the educational prompting has gone on from your side?
So we didn't really cover it in too much detail during the sort of first training. We just wanted to get people's feedback in terms of how sort of natural the prompting and communication was with the product. I would say by the time we got into the second touch point, I was then very much talking to people about prompting, what different types of ways that they could use prompts to try and get the most out of their sort of responses. So I absolutely think it will be fundamental going forward, whilst the sort of natural language does pick up to a point. To get the most out of the platform, you do find yourself prompting and re-prompting just to try and reshape those sort of initial questions that you want to get the most sort of impact from whatever you're trying to deliver. So that's an area where people definitely did struggle to start with, and we did spend a whole session around prompting and different types of approach to prompting that you could use.
Well, that's good. Yeah, especially if you've picked it up on reflection, you're like, okay, well, how do we? And I guess the main measurement is reducing the amount of re-prompts you need to do. That's how effective, I guess, the prompting in your business is going to be. And Simon, have you had a similar experience?
Well, slightly did. I mean, some of those early training sessions we did, we talked about prompting, and certainly in some of the feedback sessions, that was an issue raised, and we talked through our own experiences of what to do with prompting. We probably didn't focus quite as much as perhaps Russell did, but people found their way. And I suppose that's one of the things we need to do in a further feedback session, is actually find out people's experience with prompting, because it's a key difference. There's you need to put some detail in that prompting, otherwise you're going to get some very spurious answers back. I mean, if you're doing a bit of research and you get any answers from accountancy age back, it's just someone's opinion and not necessarily fact, and so you avoid those ones. So you need to try and do the prompting to weed out kind of speculation or those kind of things, and focus on actual facts. So prompting is definitely a key part of it, and it's an art form. But there's some tools out there. I haven't really used the tools, but there are some tools to help you develop prompts. So that'd be interesting to see where it goes. And in time, AI is going to learn, and actually AI will be kind of prompting you to prompt, as it were. So it's really interesting. I think in my experience, I think it's getting better already. So I think I certainly found over the last few months that I'm doing less and less more detailed prompting and getting more and more of the answers I want from the start, which is interesting.
And do you think that's you learning, or you think that's the engine improving?
A little bit. I think a little bit of both. So you kind of learn trial and error to know what you need to include in those prompts. Nothing too detailed. but I do think there's you're getting a slightly better response. In the early days, I'd be saying, if I was looking for a piece of legislation, I'd say in the UK to make it force it to look at UK legislation. Now it knows I'm in the UK and it always comes back with UK legislation. And I found that's quite interesting. So things seem to be moving on and the prompts are getting cleverer. Obviously, the more prompts you put in, AI is learning, right? So it's going to get easier and better.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's because it's also tailoring itself to understand you, in your kind of one-to-one interactions. And I think that's a great. I guess the purpose of Copilot is it's becoming your personal assistant, and that's what a lot of the discussions when we're now looking at AI tools in like OCR technology. That's exactly how they're designed to work: is to learn the business and really kind of tailor its responses. And I guess when it's trying to draft areas as well, to learn your feel. So what I guess I want to start talking to you about, to start with you, Simon, is where are you seeing the main benefits? What functionality of Copilot are you really seeing the biggest benefit to you, especially from a time-saving perspective, as you've been trialing this?
Well, it's definitely productivity in that time saver. Things like research. If you're researching a particular topic, you get to the point straight. There might be something, a client asks you a question, the answer to it, but you need just to back it up to make sure you've got the right answer. It's a great tool for that. Where before you might go through, look for legislation, take you 10 minutes to find the right bit of legislation, read through, make sure it understands. You just put the prompt in and it leads to that legislation and it kind of backs up the answer that you already know the answer to. You have to be careful if you're asking a question you don't know the answer to, because that's where you really need to be clear on the prompts. But it's a time-saving tool. It absolutely is. And things like, whilst it's not so great in Excel at the moment, you can go back to Edge and say, we all know roughly what formulas to use in Excel. Go away into Edge, say, write me a formula to do this, to manipulate some data. And he writes a formula for you and you just copy and paste it in. They're the real good time savers. Where before you think, oh, you put the formula in, it doesn't quite work. You think, oh, what have I got wrong? You just go into Edge and it just gets it right first time. So for me, my biggest benefit I've had is time saving.
I mean, that'd be a massive saver for me. The amount of time I've taken like tweaking formulas over and over again to try and get the right answer. Okay, brilliant. So you mentioned that Excel, it doesn't really work that effectively. Can you elaborate on what you mean by that?
It's just the functionality within Excel is not quite there yet. So, based on experiences in Edge and Outlook and Word, you'd expect to go into a spreadsheet and say, create me, you've got a column, first name and last name combined, split it into two columns. You expect to be able to do that in natural language. It's not quite there yet. You can go out to Edge and say, write me the formula to do it, and it does it. But where it needs to be and where it's heading is that you just go natural language, split the first name and last name into separate columns, and that it's not quite there yet. There's some, and up until literally this week, they had to be in a table. If it wasn't in a table, you couldn't do anything with Copilot. So it's early days. I think the focus is on Edge and some of the other tools. Excel's coming. It's getting better all the time. Every time you go into Excel and open Copilot, there's another functionality it says it can do. So, it's like any product, it's developing over time. There's an interesting add-in called Copilot for Finance, which brings slightly different tools. Very early days, it's still in beta format at the moment, beta testing. It's got one functionality, great time saver. Take two data tables, compare, and in an instant, it gives you a result where the differences lie.
Brilliant. Okay, so I mean, Excel is such an advanced tool, and with so much you can do in it, I guess it would take a little bit longer for Copilot to really, get under the hood and really understand what it can do.
What it's going to do is, we all have levels. If you look across the firms, you have levels of users of Excel: advanced, intermediate, beginners. What it's allowing is those beginners to start doing some advanced stuff because they don't need to know the detailed formulas, what's possible. I think the other takeaway, what the art of what's possible in Excel, you don't know sometimes. But I think in time, Copilot will show you what's possible, and then you can just try anything.
And I think that's a brilliant take on this, is that the Copilot engine can actually increase the speed of training for your team, which is a massive challenge in accountancy firms at the moment. So that's a really good takeaway and something that hopefully people think about. So Russell, from your aspect, what is it you found the biggest benefits? Which Microsoft systems do you see, I guess, the biggest efficiencies for you?
So I was very much focusing on myself during the rollout. So what pain points, what problems do I sort of have day to day? So for me, a lot of that is Outlook based, and it is also sort of data based, but more from documents. as opposed to, being in Excel and whatnot day to day. So one caveat I would say, though, is to use Copilot, you have to use the new version of Outlook. And the new version of Outlook is awful. And it's got so many bugs and glitches in it. Like, literally, you will try and amend an email and it will just start deleting things out of your inbox. It is awful. So that is the caveat. So be super careful. Where I saw big benefit, I book a lot of diary meetings. So I could literally prompt Copilot to scan, say, the 4 of our diaries and then suggest a meeting time for us. So I could say, for these 3 individuals and myself, could I have an hour meeting with a 15-minute gap or something between their previous meeting? And it would give me the suggested times. So that used to save me a bucket load of time in sort of calendar surfing. So I really liked that one. In terms of the SharePoint DMS that we use, and I joined Gravita in mid-December, so I don't have the back history of a lot of these documents and where things are stored. I found it super easy to find and locate these documents. And then once I did have the documents, I could get them to very quickly summarize as well for me with key points. Like, that just saved me so much time in that sort of upskilling curve and just trying to broaden my awareness of sort of things that I was looking for. So that was really, really, really good. Summaries after meetings, I think everybody's been trying this anyway. It's okay, but if it's a long meeting, it will miss a lot of things out as well. That will only get better. And I think when I started to try and play around with this was trying to prompt mid-meeting to get Copilot to pick up key points and takeaways. So almost try and overemphasize, okay, so this would be a takeaway point during the meeting. So I'm trying to change my natural language to use a prompt during a meeting. And it did start to work, to be honest with you. So that was also really good. But my favorite one, which I was sharing with the wider team, because everybody has this problem day to day, is Friday afternoons before I lock down my machine, I think, what do I need to do on Monday morning? And you can actually ask Copilot to prepare you a Monday task list. And it will go into your diary, it will go into your Outlook, and it will scan everything that you've not replied to or responded to. And it will then prompt you with a list of 10, 15 points to do on Monday. That saved me so much time. And it did pull out some things that potentially were easily overlooked that I hadn't flagged as important. So that for me was an awesome use case as well.
Yeah, I mean, to-do lists are a challenge for everyone. And so, yeah, using some AI to maybe prioritize some of those based on how critical things are, maybe tone of emails from people to understand that, they're really chasing for something, and even things that maybe you've missed. There's lots of stuff that, I use my Outlook to some extent as a to-do list, and things that are further down, I tend to kind of start to forget about because things are coming in above it and I'm trying to firefight those, and just re-highlighting actually things that areas that I may have missed, key action points I need to bring forward would be incredibly helpful. A couple of, I guess, tools I'd like to dive into a bit is there any use in Word at the moment? Have you kind of dabbled with Copilot in Word? Got any benefits, either of you?
Yes, I mean, I draft a lot of things like policies and different things like that. And it's great just to give you a structure. So if you just want a structure template for an SOP or a policy wording document or something, it will very much give you the structure, format, and layout really well. You can even ask it to draft you the draft policy wording, and this is where I was trying the reprompting. So I would ask it a question and draft a document and then slightly change it, draft another document. So I'd have sort of 2 or 3 documents, all slightly different. And then you've got something that's 60, 70% baked that you can put your own flavor on. So that for me was really useful. And I would use it to review drafts of documents as well. And we used it in PDF as well in Adobe to pull out things like from, so I do a lot of vendor commercial contracts and things like that as well. But when they send over the first drafts in Word, PowerPoint, or in PDF, I would also use it to scan that and summarize the key points. So yeah, mainly use cases were those. I don't know if you had any different, Simon.
No, fairly similar, to be honest. Writing articles and changing style for the articles, that's one that I found really good. So you kind of write your article and then basically you ask Copilot to structure it for you, because I'm an accountant, I'm not a journalist, so getting the structure right is difficult for me, but Copilot creates that structure, bullet points and etc. what it needs to, And then the other thing I've used it for, which is really interesting, is if I've written an article and I want to use it in a blog, I say change the style for a blog, and it does. And I found that you think about going back, you'd have to go back in and do that. It does it instantly. That's another great example of time saver. Use it for scanning documents, pulling out key points of contracts. I think that's going to be a use case audit team where they need to scan contracts for owners, leases, things like that. It's going to be a great time saver. Throw your leases in and get the key points out, and the key risks out actually of those contracts, and so you can train it to do that. So I think they're the great use cases for it, absolutely, within Word. But yeah, structure, tone, and then if you're not sure, you've got a little bit of a topic you need to fill it out, ask it to fill it out on that topic.
Nice. So you've mentioned Adobe. So I guess most of what we're focused on is the Microsoft products. Are we experiencing this now going into the other systems such as Adobe? And are you expecting that to expand further? Do you know of other products beyond Adobe where Microsoft Copilot's starting to penetrate?
Well, I mean, Adobe's not Microsoft Copilot. It's obviously their own take on it. But if you subscribe to the top tier license, when a document opens up in Acrobat, it gives you the options down the right hand side of what you can do with their AI. You don't need that. You can direct Copilot to a file and ask it to summarize that file or key points in that file. So you can do it with Copilot. But yeah, absolutely. I think Adobe is the one that I can really think of has got its own AI case. LinkedIn, though, hasn't it? You can write a post on LinkedIn and it says, do you want to rewrite it using AI? That's quite interesting. Makes it more salesy or whatever you want to do, more informational. It rewrites your post. So it's creeping into every product really, more and more.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks for clarifying. Because I guess my preference in this is because if you're working in the Microsoft suite, you're training your Copilot to understand you and your tone. You really want that engine to understand or kind of go into the other products. So it's you don't need to train each one. And so whilst they're individual AIs, individual Copilots at the moment, I think that's a change that the industry's got to overcome. And we'll just see if it does that over time. So is there any systems?
I can say, but that's what you can do with Copilot, because you can say, look at this file. It doesn't matter what product it's come from. You say, look at this file, and then you get in that consistent approach to looking at that file.
Brilliant. And then is there any systems that, I guess, Microsoft systems that you found Copilot particularly weak in? You've mentioned Excel. Is there any other ones you've tried and just gone, it is not ready for this? Russell, do you know any?
So I use PowerPoint a lot, and I heard big things. And if you look across the different socials and use cases, people talk about generating PowerPoints, in minutes and seconds. I found it not to be great in terms of what I was going to deliver. I'm quite particular with my PowerPoint and my sort of layouts and things like that, but it was quite basic. It was quite generic. If I was doing GCSE homework on a country, I could pull it together very quickly, like something like that. It would absolutely work. But when I'm trying to present a business case or something, it really doesn't give what I was looking to do. So that for me was definitely in the Microsoft suite. That was probably the most limited, I would say, and then probably followed by Excel, as we've touched on already.
Yeah, PowerPoint is disappointing. One of their selling points is take this PDF and turn it into a PowerPoint. It's not, as Russell alluded to, it's not great. I'm not sure it's going to save you a lot of time.
Well, fair enough. That's hopefully something that will come over time. As we've said, the whole thing's learning. And I have found that the meeting note summaries are the ones that people seem to have jumped on straight away. It's really good to feel that maybe that's not as effective as some of the prompts in Outlook or Edge, where you're doing your research, you're drafting or standardizing. So what I'd love to understand maybe from, we'll start with you, Simon, is what do you think are your 3 key areas that if people want to get the most out of, or they want to start using Microsoft Copilot, that they should focus on to feel the biggest wins?
We touched on it earlier, prompting. That's a key tool. You need to get those prompts right. Otherwise, you get some spurious results. We hear of hallucination. So Copilot and AI can hallucinate and give you false results. There's a great case. There's a tax case where someone defended themselves and they created 3 case examples to put to the tribunal, and the judge said that's fantastic way you delivered that. Those cases don't exist. So I think that's really key. You need to get those prompts right. So that's definitely one. Learning about prompting and trial and error with prompting. And I think actually just trying, it's what you need to understand, particularly at the moment, because through this conversation, it's very obvious we're all just trying to see what works. I think most people I talk to are going through the same process. Is the art of what's possible. I think it may not be there yet. Excel isn't there quite there yet, but by doing some of the other Copilot stuff, you learn in the art of what's possible. And I think that's really key and then that's when you can develop use cases. I've heard of people saying, "Oh, it's not great. What can we use it for? It's very limited." But actually, if you don't go through that process, you don't know what you can use it for. And that's what I found through our process. Actually, well, I wonder if you can do this. Oh, wasn't that great? And it's the art of what's possible. That's a real takeaway. You need to have that bit of experiment at the moment because not everyone's using it. We're still learning what the use cases are. So experiment because it's that art of what's possible.
Brilliant. And if there was one of the Microsoft piece of software you think this is the one that I would trial it on first, is there a specific one you pick?
Probably Edge. A lot of people in their day will go into Google and search for things. Try it in Edge because that's where you learn your prompts. You see what results come back. You can re-prompt. And you gradually learn over time. Actually, I'm going to get this right first time. I'm going to prompt this, and that's how you learn. It's a great way of learning prompting. So when it comes to using the other products, you're more likely to get the results you need.
Cool. No, brilliant. So it's a good place to start. And Russell, what about yourself? What do you think the 3 biggest takeaways should be for anyone that wants to start using Copilot?
So I recently fed my 3 back to the pilot team. So they're quite straightforward. It was firstly, focus on incremental benefits rather than a massive big bang win. Too many people, when they start, go, I need to take a 40-day task down to 20 seconds. Doesn't happen. So incremental benefits, 1%. Largely, if they apply to you, they'll apply to others as well. 2, make it a habit in your day. Like just start playing with it, using it, make it part of your day. If you just try and pick it up and put it down, it doesn't become a habit. And like you say, you don't get the long-term benefits. And as things evolve, you don't see the benefits from the evolution. And then the third thing was my favorite saying is you don't know what you don't know. So share that knowledge, because I could sit there and do the most amazing Copilot pilot. But if I don't share that with people, they don't find different use cases, different ways of working and approaches that I wouldn't be looking for. So share that knowledge. Everyone's learning, and do keep on top of the updates because they change hourly.
Yes, no, this is a very fast developing space, isn't it? And I think, firstly, Simon and Russell, thank you for coming on. And I think we'll have to get you back on once you start to roll this across your firms and understand kind of what the wider perception and uptake will be. But I feel that this is a great place to wrap up this week's show. Hopefully this episode provided anyone that is looking to adopt Microsoft Copilot with valuable insights that they can take forward. Please do check out the show notes and the links to Digital Disruptors, SP Digital, and a wonderful sponsor, Free Agent. This will be recorded and uploaded on our YouTube channel. So if you do miss anything, want to reference it, please do check it out there. Please do subscribe so you'll be able to see any future episodes and also get the prompts to join future live episodes on Thursday mornings around 8:30. We look forward to speaking to you again soon.